Hi, everybody. So, guess what's happening in Venezuela? Well, according to CNN, you got Juan Guaido is leading everybody in a revolution. It says opposition leader Juan Guaido just spoke to a cheering crowd in Caracas, Venezuela. We're going to stand here together, asking and demanding the military to join, he said. Oh, wow. Look, attempted coup underway in Venezuela. Look how cool they make him look. Here it is. You want to hear a little bit of it? Here's a little bit of it.
For many years, we have talked to the armed forces, and today it's clear to us that the armed forces are with the Venezuelan people and not with the dictator.
Yeah, they're not with the dictator. But again, if there was a dictator in that country, do you think he would let a guy stand there in the middle of his country? You don't think they would kill that guy immediately? So what they're doing is this is also trying to get them to arrest Guaido. Right? And here's what Lee Camp says. At no point in this video do they show you the size of the crowd Guaido is speaking to. If CNN was interested in journalism, not just propaganda, then the size of the crowd would be important. They're just trying to portray him as a revolutionary hero. And boy, are they. Charlie Hurtado says, congrats, CNN. What a way to throw any credibility down the toilet. 50 years from now, when kids are learning about what happened in Venezuela, historical records will cite CNN in the wrong side of history. Yes, they've already lied blatantly. They said their own reporters saw that the government soldiers started those aid trucks on fire. That didn't happen. That was a lie. That wasn't misreporting. That was a deliberate lie by CNN because they're liars and they're working hand in hand with the security state. Here's what's really happening. This is from Venezuelan Analysis, and the headline is Venezuelan military putsch defeated. How do you spell that? Putsch? How do you pronounce that? I don't know either. Putsch defeated as Leopold Lopez takes refuge in Spanish embassy. And the subheadline says opposition protesters clash with security forces while government supporters swiftly mobilized to defend the presidential palace. So there's Guaido and there's the other guy, Lopez. And this is from VenezuelanAnalysis.com. It says interim President Juan Guaido and right-wing opposition leader Leopold Lopez spearheaded an unsuccessful coup attempt in Caracas on Tuesday. The thwarted uprising started in the early morning hours when renegade military and intelligence officers reportedly released Lopez from house arrest. So the CIA and Bolton and Elliot Abrams are in there. They're paying off people, baby. They're paying off certain members of their military, certain members of their intelligence community. Lopez then joined Guaido and a handful of soldiers on the Altamira overpass in East Caracas outside the Francisco de Miranda air base known as La Carlota. Lopez and Guaido released videos on social media calling on the armed forces to back their efforts and urging supporters to take to the streets in what they termed the final phase of the so-called Operation Freedom. So what they're doing is calling for violence. What Juan Guaido and Lopez is doing, the leaders of the opposition, is calling for out-and-out violence. They're calling for killing people right now. That's what they're calling for in Venezuela. You know, you say, well, you got to oppose everybody. No, they're not doing that. They're doing it violently. That's what this is all about. They want to go kill some people and take over that country. Large crowds of anti-government protesters, as well as opposition lawmakers, made their way to the Altamira overpass. The scene then saw armed confrontations between the soldiers that backed Juan Guaido and those inside La Carlota air base. According to witnesses in La Carlota, the Venezuelan armed forces fired tear gas, meaning the armed forces loyal to the government and the people of Venezuela, and Maduro, they fired tear gas towards the Altamira overpass, where civilian protesters began to gather. Whereas Guaido's soldiers, the ones who defected to Guaido, the handful of them that did, those soldiers returned live fire. So whereas the Venezuelan government soldiers, the Maduro soldiers, were shooting tear gas to disperse the crowd, the soldiers that are on the United States side started firing live ammunition. Oh, I thought that's what a thug would do. I thought that's what strongman maniacs do. I thought that's what oppressive dictators do. That's what we're doing. That's what the United States is doing in Venezuela. At the same time, many of the originally deployed soldiers withdrew from the scene, later revealing that they had been deceived by their superiors. So the soldiers that were on Guaido's side on that bridge, they left because they realized they'd been deceived by their superiors who'd been paid off by Elliott Abrams, John Bolton, and the United States, the CIA. Simultaneously, Chavista leaders took to state and social media to denounce what they termed a coup in progress, and large crowds gathered to defend Miraflores presidential palace. So as soon as they figured out there was a coup, or they were trying to do this, the Maduro government, the government of Venezuela, then took to media to denounce this coup happening, and immediately large crowds gathered to defend their government and their president. Juan Guaido, the CIA puppet, Juan Guaido, later attempted to lead a march, including some armed soldiers, into western Caracas, but was stopped by the Venezuelan National Guard. So there you go, about 10 kilometers away from the presidential palace. So didn't happen. They tried to do a coup. It failed. So they tried to get them in. It failed. And who's failing? Elliott Abrams, John Bolton, Donald Trump, the United States, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. They're all on board for this. And here's what Aaron Matei says. There's no way Guaido and his cohort, I doubt he's even the one making the decisions. Of course they're not. Elliott Abrams is making the decisions. It's coming from Pompeo. It's coming from John Bolton. That's where it's coming from. And Trump signs off on all this because he said he was going to drain the swamp, except he is the swamp. Those guys are the swamp. Those guys are war criminals. Congratulations. So now you know what it feels like to be a chump who voted for Trump.
Yeah, right, because the military-industrial complex got Trump's mind straight.
Yeah, so Trump might have went into office with some big ideas about ending our foreign interventions, but those ideas had been knocked out of his head, and he's on board. He's just like Barack Obama. He's just like George W. Bush. He's just like Bill Clinton. He's just like Ronald Reagan. They're all the same, baby. They're all the same. So he goes on, he launched this new coup push so there's no way that these people did this without Trump's administration's blessing. They all must know that this will compel Maduro to arrest Guaido and stop the coup. So what is Trump administration planning to do after that? So I don't know if they've actually arrested Guaido, but we'll see. So here's a soldier. You want to hear? Here's a soldier, and then right after this, I'm going to show you a video of Tucker Carlson on his show. He brought out an actual reporter, unlike MSNBC, CNN, Washington Post, or New York Times. Tucker Carlson once again doing better work on Venezuela than Chris Hayes and Rachel Maddow. But here's how the opposition tricked some soldiers to be part of the coup, and then they figured it out. Here we go.
Bueno, el día de ayer aproximadamente a las 6 de la tarde nos mandaron a buscar.
So he says yesterday around 6 o'clock in the afternoon, they sent us to look for patriotic uniforms and to receive some decorations and news that would change our lives, he says. They gave us that information at 3 in the morning. They sent us to look for rifles. They sent us to deliver rifles, and they told us that we would go to take the Tocaron prison. So that was from their leaders who were paid off by the CIA. This is what happened. They sent us to deliver rifles, and they told us that we would go take the Corona prison because they had entered 1,000 rifles and were going to get the prisoners out so that they would go out and fight against the people. So do you see what Juan Guaido and his people were doing? They went to a prison. They wanted to bring thousands of rifles to prisoners and let the prisoners out to go fight against other Venezuelans. So that's who the United States is in bed with. Literal people who are prisoners. That's who they're going to arm. They're opening up the prisons. Okay. And what do you think about, so the reporter asked this soldier, what do you think about this situation? And he says this is another sabotage by the pro-coup right wing that wants us to confront each other. So he realizes what this is. And then they ask him, do you think this is a false flag operation to put soldiers against soldiers? And he responds by saying, that's right. They are looking to make soldiers fight other soldiers. But we have to show them once again they will not be able to do that. So there you go. So there's a soldier, and he figured it out. And now here's on from Venezuela, we've had on Max Blumenthal, we've had on Aaron Mate, we've had on Abby Martin and Mike Preisner. We spoke with Eva Bartlett, who was down there, and they all say the same thing. CNN and the American media is lying to you about what's happening. And so now here's Anya Parampel, and she was down there also. We've featured some of her reporting already. So Tucker Carlson brought her on. Now this is a reporter who was in Venezuela and can tell you what's happening. I wonder, I guess they don't have her number at CNN, MSNBC, Washington Post.
So what do you make of the news coverage of this?
Your viewers won't be shocked to hear this, Tucker, but the news media, the fake news media, are lying about the situation in Venezuela. Let me put it for you this way. Imagine if Hillary Clinton had refused to admit defeat after losing to President Trump in 2016 and banded together a group of 24 U.S. soldiers and attempted to take the White House by force. I don't think she'd be walking freely on the streets the way Juan Guaido is walking right now in Caracas, and I certainly think the news media would be calling it rightfully a coup. And let me just tell you, when it comes to what's happening on the ground there, I can tell you, I was there for a month earlier this year. The opposition has no popular support. Juan Guaido proved today once again that he will only ride in to power on the back of a U.S. tank. And what's more, we hear about a humanitarian crisis there, Tucker, but what we never hear is that is the intended result of U.S. sanctions which have targeted Venezuela since 2015. Sanctions which, according to a report that was released just last week by the Center for Economic and Policy Research, has led to the deaths of 40,000 Venezuelans and will lead to the deaths of thousands more if these sanctions aren't overturned. President Trump, if he truly cared about the American or the Venezuelan people and the American people for that matter, he would end this disastrous policy. He would end the sanctions, and he would look into John Bolton's eyes, into Elliott Abrams' eyes, and Mike Pompeo's eyes and say, you are fired. You are leading me down a disastrous path, another war for oil, something the president said. He was celebrated by the American people when he said Iraq was a mistake, and now he's willing to do it again.
But it is a
That's on Fox. They're saying that on Fox News. They're not saying that on MSNBC. They're not saying that on Anderson Cooper. And who else to bring you the real news to the working people than a member of the Vanderbilt family? They're not telling you that. Why is Tucker doing this? I don't have any idea. But because it doesn't prop up Trump, this is telling the truth that Trump's another warmonger, just like George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, just like Barack Obama and Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. They're all friggin' warmongers. And they all do the bidding of American corporations, and they all do propaganda, and they lie to their own people. And why is and you're not embarrassed that Tucker Carlson is the one bringing on real journalists to tell you the truth? You're not embarrassed? I'm talking about CNN. I'm talking about New York Times. I'm talking about NBC News. Of course they're not embarrassed. They're the people doing the invasion. They're not embarrassed. They're all part of this big capitalist gangbang, and we got to get that oil. So, once again, shame on the American news media. And except here it is. Look, that's amazing. So if you want to know what's going on in Venezuela, I guess you got to turn on Fox News. Certainly don't turn on Chris Hayes or Chris Matthews or or Rachel Maddow or fake tough guy Lawrence O'Donnell, they're not going to tell you the truth.
I mean, I just really still don't understand. My head spins every time I hear somebody who's supposed to be a liberal who's all for this coup.
Yes.
As if, they're pretending that they didn't have a presidential election. They're
Right.
pretending, and they're not informing the
Right.
American public that the people that Guaido represents, they actually boycotted that election. So they didn't even want to go through a democratic process of electing this official. And this guy, Guaido, Jimmy, has been around, he's been around for a while, and they've been pushing this coup since January.
I know. Not happening. The people are not on board. Can you imagine if in the United States, all of a sudden people from Venezuela said, we got to get rid of Trump. People hate him. He got 3 million fewer votes. He's not even the real president. We got our real president. It's Nancy Pelosi. That's what this is. Of course, the people don't want that to happen in Venezuela. And that's what we're trying to do to them. And so now anybody who voted for Trump because you thought he was an anti-interventionist, now I would like to disabuse you of that stupid idea. Trump is a charlatan, just like all the rest of them. And he certainly got, if he went into office with the idea of getting us out of our foreign entanglements, he certainly got that idea kicked out of him. And he's one of the club, baby. He's one of the boys. Next live Jimmy Dore show is June 5th. That's a Wednesday at Hermosa Beach Comedy Club in Hermosa Beach, California. Go to jimmydoorecomedy.com for a link for all tickets. We might be coming to your town. And if you love the show, please become a patron. Please support the show. We give you hours of bonus material every week. And please click that bell and make sure you're subscribed. Even if you think you are already subscribed, they unsubscribe people every day. Just check. Thanks for your support.